this dungeon.
Yep, so we're going to follow our hero in hot pants today as we head through this area. And as I mentioned before, the player's been investigating the link between these drow and their attack on Kingdom. So the very first creature we encounter here is one of the drow. Now, everything in our game is based on real-world myths, legends, and conspiracy theories. In this case, the drow are based on a Nordic legend that the spirits of drowned Viking warriors would resurrect to take vengeance on their foes. So, whenever you encounter drow in our game, you'll always encounter zombies, and there's a reason for this. It's kind of disgusting, but we're going to talk about that in a minute anyway.
We don't have much trash mobs in our dungeon, but we have mini-bosses. And we use these mini-bosses as a tool to teach the players the important mechanics of the game. In this case, the water is electrified, and when the player steps into it, he takes damage and he's slowed. And when we teach players these other types of mechanics, it's not only true for this isolated incident, it's true for the entire game.
Yep, and it's true in real life. Keep that in mind. Don't walk in electrified water.
It's an educational game.
Alright. So, this is one of the drow females, and as I mentioned, the drow and the zombies have this rather disgusting relationship. So, the way that the drow reproduce is by raping the corpses of their fallen enemies. I'm not really supposed to use the word rape. It's a very good point. They surprise sex the corpses of their fallen enemies. And, surprise! Right, yeah, this is terrible. Oh my god, we're gonna get shot. Anyway, the marketing team's gonna shoot us afterwards. So, there's areas of the game where players can actually lock down the PvE content dynamically by preventing the female drow from impregnating new zombies and creating new drow. So it's kind of an interesting way to dynamically affect the PvE content.
This drow sorceress is fighting with the drow magic. She protects herself with this white barrier that can be countered by certain abilities in the game. She also summons this storm cloud at certain areas of the arena that the players need to step out from because it deals a lot of damage to them. And that, in addition to the electrified water, creates a lot of hazardous areas that the player needs to watch out for. And she's naked.
You'd hit that, wouldn't you? That's pretty nasty, man.
Oh?
Yeah, I know. You drink too much. That's your problem.
I've seen worse.
Alright, so as we move forward here, I want to take
It'll be one of those presentations.
It is already one of those presentations. Right, so as we move forward, I want to talk a little bit about the level design. When we decided to set this area in the real world in Maine, we actually sent a bunch of our artists over on an airplane, not a helicopter, all the way to Maine from Oslo, and they ran around taking some photographs of the coastline there, getting some good photographic concepts, which we use to build these areas, because we really want players to feel like these locations they encounter in our game are places they could come to in the real world, or places that they could go to.
So this is another example of how we teach mechanics to the players. This is a drow pod, and when the player stands close to it for too long, it explodes, knocking the player back and dealing damage. But if the players are quick enough to kill them off before they get to explode, they should be safe.
And we win. So far you've been seeing sort of the entry area to this instance, but we're going to show you guys a little more of the scope of this area as we come forward here. So this is the wreckage of the cargo ship Polaris, which went missing on the Atlantic Ocean in 2007. And as you can see, the ship has crashed into the shore of this island, reappearing just recently, crashed into the shore of this island with a cargo of drow, who immediately began reconfiguring the area into their base of operations for their attack on Kingsman Town. You can tape this one off. It looks really weird. Do I look weird? Or is it sexy?
It's not as sexy.
Yeah. Alright. I'll put it back on. It's my cheeks every time I do it. That works. It's alright. So, moving on. I've lost the thread now. Anyway,
what's the part of the plot? Is the Earth fighting back?
Part of the storyline in our game is that darkness is rising all over the world, and all the occult forces which have lain hidden for hundreds of years are bubbling to the surface. Now, the Earth is fighting back against this, and the way in which the Earth does this is by creating these points known as animal wells. Martin will talk about the animal wells, won't you, Martin?
I will. When the players next to one of these animal wells, they can open up the skill wheel. That's the skill wheel. And in here, the players can find over 500 unique abilities. and the players can learn all of them on a single character. When I say that the abilities are unique, that means that we don't have like rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of a fireball. A fireball is a fireball, and it will scale with your equipment. So in here you'll find tons of cool toys to play with. Chaos magic, fist weapons, swords, hammers, shotguns, pistols, a lot of cool stuff. And every single ability has been designed with multiple levels of synergy. And players can wield multiple weapons at the same time. So it's all about finding these cool combinations of weapons and cool combinations of abilities that work well with each other that you take into battle. So what the player is doing right now is that he was playing a melee character during the first mini-boss fight. That was kind of cumbersome because he had to deal damage while still moving away from the storm cloud and dealing with the electrical currents, the electrical water thingy. And so it was suboptimal to be melee. So now he's doing is throwing out all the hammer abilities and equipping assault rifle abilities and elementalism abilities, becoming a range DPS character. So, and this is a really important aspect of the Secret World because you're not locked down to a class, you're not locked down to a role. You can change on the fly like this.
Alright, so you remember the map we picked up earlier? This is now the player's in-game map for navigating the area, and we're going to jump ahead now to the area of high biological material concentration, find out what that's all about. Even though we know, because we played this 300 times in the last week. Don't spoil it. Alright, so this is one of the Draug warlords known as the Varangian. And as with everything in our game, these guys are also based on a real people. The Varangian were actually a group of people who fought in Russia in the Middle Ages, and they gained a reputation for being really brutal in battle. And this guy's rather brutal in battle. Marlon's going to tell you all about how.
This is the first dungeon in the Secret World, and this is the first boss. So the mechanics are fairly simple, but it teaches the player some important aspects of the combat. From time to time, the Varangian will wipe his aggro list and basically charge around the player. When that happens, it's important that the tank is on the ball, using his taunting abilities to regain control of the fight. In addition, as we said in the beginning, the Draug controls the zombies, and at certain times, the Varangian will submerge himself in the water to spawn zombies. When that happens, the team has to kill off the zombies quickly before he reappears to maintain that level of control in the fight. Realizing that he's losing the battle and he's retreating to a different area. He's throwing zombies in the way to slow the players down. It's important that the players just push through and to see where he's going.
Alright, so when we come around the corner here, you'll see that the Varangian has actually created himself a nest, a safe zone, by using containers from the cargo ship. Within that area, he regenerates his health. So the players need to get in there and take him down quickly. In addition to that, he's electrified the water in the area. So straight away that mechanic which we learned in the first mini-boss fight comes back into play, but this time with a twist.
Yeah, he has another trick up his sleeve. He can output electricity on some of these containers. So we already taught the player that electricity is bad. So it's all about learning from previous fights, taking that knowledge into the next battle. So reading your surroundings, you can see the containers at the far end to the right there is electrified. So worrying about like where you're standing and while still taking this guy down. He also has a couple of knockback abilities to throw the players into the water.
Alright, so Varangian's now down, and I'm sure you think this game is all about just shooting shit, but now we're going to talk a little bit about how we're making people think while they play our game. And I know it's hard, but you know, we've got to force people to do it sometimes. So, as I mentioned in the cutscene, this ship was actually transporting some cargo from the Hiroshi Group's other sister corporation. So when we interact with this glowing green crate, we find that it requires a code. And now we ask players to think a little bit outside the box, in this case quite literally on the outside of the box. The edge of the shipping container contains a number. Now, players can go into the Hiroshi website, log into the cargo manifest for their shipping companies, locate the Polaris, locate the shipping container using the number, and actually find out the code for that crate inside. Simple stuff. Yeah, very simple puzzle solving. But in this way, we want players to feel like they're interacting with the secret world in the real world as they play the game. So we're asking people to work together to solve these problems. So we're going to jump ahead now. Thinking was a bit much for some people. Just kidding. Alright, so
You're so charming.
I'm an asshole. Alright, so here we are in the shadow of the Polaris itself. And as you can see, the Draug have been slowly converting this into their base of operations, using this These guys are the former crew members of the Polaris that have been raised by the Draug in order to use the navigation equipment on the ship and grounded on this island. So we're going to progress into the hull now. Martin's going to talk a little bit about how progression works in the secret world.
Yeah, just a couple of words on progression. We don't have any levels in the game, but we have tons of different ways that the player can progress with his character. And we have both vertical progression and horizontal progression. Vertical progression comes in the form of getting better items. Getting better items makes you stronger, makes you deal more damage, makes you mitigate more damage, makes you heal better. In addition to that, and equally important, is the horizontal progression, which comes in the form of getting all these different abilities. Now this is comparable to a collectible card game mechanic like Magic the Gathering, for instance, where a player who owns every single card in Magic the Gathering isn't necessarily the best player, he has the most options. And how that translates to our game is that a player who has all the abilities has more options when it comes to creating these cool builds, almost like decks in Magic the Gathering, or he has more options when it comes to counter like the flavor of the week or flavor of the month. So it's all about you're presented with a challenge, and it's up to you how you want to overcome that challenge.
Alright. So we're coming up on one of the central parts of this area of the Polaris. This is where a strong psychic signal has been emanating from, and the Hiroshi picked it up on their instruments, and they've sent the player here to find out exactly what is happening here. Here we find the Primordial Dweller. This guy is the mastermind behind the attacks on Kingsman. He's controlling all the creatures in Kingsman using his psychic powers. So the player's going to need to use every single thing that they've picked up throughout this area to be able to take this boss down.
Yeah, he's fighting with the same kind of Draug magic that the players encountered in the first mid-boss fight. He protects himself from time to time with this white barrier that the players need to counter with certain abilities. He also summons these poisonous ink spots on the ground that will erupt after a few seconds that the player needs to watch out for. In addition to that, the players will encounter these Draug balls that explode and knock the players away, but this time they're actually attached to the zombies, and the zombies will run up to the player, and if they're not either crowd controlled or kept away from the group or killed, they will explode and knock the players down, and then the player takes damage. In addition to that, he spawns these small variations on himself called octobots that spawns in PAX of uniform, and will just keep harassing the player until they're either dead or crowd control kept away from the group. So it's all about taking the knowledge that the player has learned in the previous fights in the dungeon into one big fight. And as this fight goes on, just more and more of these elements come into play. And all of them.
So as you can see, like the player can move and shoot, move and fight, move and cast in our game. In addition to this, visual looks have no effect on player stats, so you can dress however you want in our game when you're playing. So that means that you can take on demons in a tutu for a weekend. It does not matter. You can look however you want. That's one for the role players.
There are items with stats in the game, of course, but they're not visible.
Alright, so the team has won and taken down the Primordial Dweller. Well done. And we're going to head back to the helicopter now and take a ride back to civilization.
I hope nothing goes wrong.
Sorry?
I hope nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, probably nothing wrong. Nothing ever goes wrong. Dun, dun, dun.
Get to fight this guy, but we're not spoiling the entire dungeon for you guys today. Sorry about that.
Only 99% of it. We're not going to spoil the entire dungeon.
The game launches in April 2012. Hope to see you guys there. Please take a minute and do the initiation test outside and see which secret society you guys would best be suited for. That concludes our presentation. The exit is that way, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for coming, guys.